Hey everyone, welcome to Russ's crash course on running. Here's how to run a marathon. Step one, get going, start running. Now, the point of getting going is to build a habit. It doesn't matter how far you run, it doesn't matter how long you run. You need to find a way to protect some time in your day and be able to easily, quickly, and repeatably start running. Starting is always the hardest part. So, for me, I would make sure that I had specific running clothes and I would put them in a specific place. And every day at the same time, I would put those running clothes on and go for a very short run. Same time every day, same place, same thing. The whole point here is just to get going and build that habit. Super, super important to go slow and take it easy. Running should not be hard, especially at the beginning. People think it's hardest at the beginning. No, just go really, really slow. You can run and then walk and then run and walk for like 2 minutes. Some people have given me the advice, I think I've got this from a book at some point, which is, look, even if you don't want to go for your run, just put your shoes on, just put the clothes on and then take them off, and call that a success. And so for this, I would suggest starting by running every day, any small distance. I would also start by walk running, which is basically like you walk a little bit and then you run for like 10 seconds and then you walk again. And maybe you're out of breath after that 10 seconds and maybe you're not and you run again when you want to. So that's thing one. Thing two is a lot of people run without, any noise, try to be like in the flow, like totally with themselves. And I think that is absolutely great. But when you start going, put on some music, put on something that you're actually going to enjoy. Make it so that this is a seamless and simple and pleasant transition from not running to not running again. And so after you develop all that, maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks, however long, then we actually want to start with a training plan. Now, I recommend the Nike Run Club app. I fucking love this app. It is amazing, and it has got me to the place where I need to go. It's it's got like a bunch of bugs and like it's kind of silly sometimes, but like the audio guided runs are extremely high quality. The coaching that they offer you is invaluable. If you saw any of my videos about deliberate coaching, you will know that deliberate practice, you would know that expert coaching is one of the most important factors in getting better at something. So they have great coaches who tell you what to do while you're running. They tell you how, when to pick it up or when to slow down. They give you some compliments. There's like a little bit of life coaching. It's actually like really kind of nice. And it's like a little funny, it's funny in the way that it's like both positive and funny at the same time. So I think the kind of the personality and the tone of these audio guided runs are really interesting and fun. And if you like let them and accept this, someone telling you nice things, it's okay. It's not as cheesy as it might sound. So that's an app that I highly recommend. Strava is great. All the other ones are great, but audio guided runs are so, so important. The coaching is invaluable. They teach you how to run in cold, hot, snow and sleet, thunderstorms, winter, ice, whatever. The type of clothing you might need. I mean, it's a Nike app. And so the ultimate goal with this app is to get you to buy Nike stuff, but it's not like in your face. It just says, look, I'm going to do this nice thing for you and I'm not going to push my stuff too hard. But if it makes you like the brand and want to buy the clothes, that's fine too, which was really nice because I didn't feel like anyone was trying to sell me anything, which is when I actually, started buying stuff like from Nike, I just had such affinity for the brand because they did so many things for me without asking anything in return, which, yeah, it's a manipulation technique, but one that I'm okay with. I'm fine with that. Anyways, this is not really about brands or marketings or whatever, because also marketing is stupid and ads are stupid and they should be replaced by companies that are providing value and asking nothing for return just to build their brand. I think that's what Nike is doing with this app, and I want to support that idea, that model, that business model. I think is incredibly valuable. So I want everyone to use this app because it's so good and it feels like it's a more moral way of doing advertising. So anyways, audio guide runs are great. The life coaching is great. The teaching, the expert guidance, having someone in your ear with you on your run, absolutely great. They tell you times to think about your footsteps or do this exercise or do this drill, or for 5 seconds, imagine you're walking on a cloud or running on a cloud, or all these little things add up and help you improve your technique and whatnot. So highly recommend this app. I think it was one of the keys to my success. Once I got going and was doing it regularly, I got this app. So for me, I started doing runs in the heat, which was very, very difficult, but I did runs in the heat and took water with me and they were short and it was fine. And so that's thing one. Now, once you get going and you have some good guidance, you have a system, whatever, the first thing I'm going to talk about is often the last thing that people talk about. The most important thing when you are trying to get better at a sport, an activity, or whatever is recovery. Your body needs to recover from your workouts. Your body needs to grow. You need to sleep well and sleep deeply, 8 hours a day at least. Come on, everyone. You need to make sure you have a cold sleeping environment, that you have restful sleep, use sleep tracking if you'd like. Make sure you have the same bedtime and wake up time every single day. Set a bedtime alarm. There's so many things that we can talk about that are sleep related that we have talked about in another video, but that is when your body rebuilds muscles and you recover. That is what happens during deep sleep. Flushing out toxins is such a stupid, like, hokey word, but flushing out, byproducts of metabolism and rebalancing your body and blood chemistry and rebuilding muscles and repairing things. Also, during that time while you were sleeping, you can sometimes you visualize yourself running and you understand and learn that cadence and become more aware of your body. One of the most important things about running for me was that it helped me become aware of my body. It increased the proprioception is the word that I'm looking for. It's kind of one of these, it's a wonderful word that describes one's understanding of one's own body position. For example, if I close my eyes, how do I know that I'm going to touch my, oh my God, I totally did that. Touch my nose exactly. It's because I have, in my joints, there is a sensation of the angles and positions and everything. And in our minds is an understanding of the lengths of all these ideas, of all these, components. And so this is one of the kind of miracles of humanity, proprioception, this awareness of your entire body. It's also part of the balance question. People kind of don't have a super great answer physiologically on how and why we're able to keep such good balance, and where the kind of the balance comes from. A lot of people say ankles, obviously inner ear is important for measurement, but whatever, proprioception is very important. So having that body awareness, actually having your entire head inside your body without thinking, but being aware of everything simultaneously. This is a type of parallel processing that really great athletes have that I did not know and did not realize that I didn't have until I started really running, or I didn't know how much better it could become until I started running. So I have a friend who I consider my most athletic friend. He was a baseball pitcher when he was a kid, very talented. And, I always thought I was relatively athletic because, spry, fast reflexes, et cetera, and was able to get good at certain things at, a good rate. But I didn't realize that I didn't know what athletic meant until I saw him, until I saw the way that he was able to move and control his body, off a diving board or during a pose or a position. And I realized that, he had grown up and understood this awareness of his body so much better than I had ever thought I could. So while running, I started to have more of this body awareness, and that became hugely important for all the other activities, all the other sports that I did, rock climbing and swimming and biking, and even just standing and posture and really everything that goes along with that. Now I'm trying to fix my posture because, I just mentioned it. But the body awareness that comes from running is incredibly important. And as you get farther into this journey, sometimes maybe you just want to be in silence and you want to be in your run and feel the your feet hitting the ground and your arms pumping and the tension and relaxation in your face and back and everything. And having to focus on every single part of your body at the same time, it literally takes up all your entire mind's focus. If you do it in an actually present way, you don't even have space to think about something else. So it is engaging. So I find that incredibly helpful and really a great way of connecting with my body and kind of meditating during this. I used to listen to a lot of music while running. Now sometimes not so much, but one of the things that I heard from a pro runner during an audio guided run was, he said, when you're running, be there. Be with your run. You're doing this thing. Don't try to pretend it's not there. If you hate it, you're trying to avoid it, right? But actually being there and being aware and deliberate is, as we know, one of those great, one of the important parts about learning things, right? You need to be focused during this time. 1 hour of intense focus practice is better than 3 hours of diffuse practice, right? That's for body awareness. Obviously, if you just need to hit your metrics, get your miles in and stuff like that, it's maybe different. So I've talked about that before. There's another video a couple of days ago a couple of videos ago or whatever that talks a little bit about that. So, for example, like for me, I do listen to like music or an audiobook really when it's a really long run where I'm just like, it's 4 hours. I don't think I can like, do this without, I want this to be over. I want to be aware when I'm aware, but I also want something to go back to. So oftentimes I will listen to music and then like kind of like be focused on that when there's a really arduous part that I want to just kind of skip, right? Sometimes they're hard runs. So obviously, do what you got to do. So now we had the first step, which was get going, right? Get going, start doing the thing. The next part is get good. Get good means get your tools, audio guided runs, get like your training schedules, get coaching, learn how to do it properly. Now, I've talked about periodicity before. I've talked about kind of different types of runs. But I'll mention it again. There's really 3 types of runs you should be doing every week if you want to kind of improve your speed and distance. One is a recovery run. Most of your runs, most of your miles should be done as a recovery run. A recovery run typically has your heart rate less than 145 beats per minute. You're running at a leisurely pace, and you should be able to hold on a conversation or laugh at a good joke or be able to talk while you are on this run. It's not hard. It's easy. It's one of those times where you just like enjoy the day, or you can listen to some nice music. You can be aware of your body if you want. You can kind of be meditative about it, but it should be a relaxing, nice run. And that part, those runs are where you actually get stronger. It's where the blood flows through your muscles and it kind of wakes you up, speeds up your recovery, speeds up your blood, building, muscle building, and VO2 max, and all this stuff are very, very important. The second type of run is a hard run. It's an interval run. It's something where you can go really fast or in intervals. Now there's various types of these. There could be tempo runs, interval runs, repeats. There's a lot of various ways that you can do this run, but we'll just say there's one hard run where you focus on going fast. And we can go deeper into those types of runs. We can talk about tempo runs as well in a minute. And the third one is a long run. This wants to be a very slow pace, also a slow pace, your marathon pace, let's say, and for like a long period of time. So with each of those 3 types of runs, you can have, 4 to 7 runs a week of these types, 1 hard run, 1 long run, and the rest recovery runs. Now that's basically what you want to do as far as the type of runs you want to do. Now let's talk about distance and kind of some metrics here. The first thing you want to do when you kind of like get going or you're in the get good part is to find out your VO2 max. Now your VO2 max, so VO2 max is a representation of how much oxygen your body can consume at a time. It's the maximum amount of O2 that your muscles and body can consume. So this is affected by things like how deeply you breathe in, how like lung capacity, how often the cadence of breathing, and the ability of your body to actually convert oxygen into energy, to burn oxygen. Because metabolism is essentially it's an exothermic reaction that takes oxygen plus molecules that have energy stored in bonds, breaks those bonds, mixes them with the O2, kind of an ignition process, and releases some byproducts along with energy that you use to contract muscles and do so many things, right? I majored in biochemistry, so we can definitely talk about that for a long time, but we won't right now. So the key to metabolism is converting O2. You get this metric called VO2 max, which is the max amount of O2 you can consume. Typically it's like expressed in milliliters per kilogram per minute, something like that. And that's an important and useful metric. But a lot of times to actually get that metric, you need to go onto a treadmill in a lab, put on this facial mask, do a whole thing. And it's a bit of a production, right? You can get estimated VO2 maxes through phone and phone apps often that will use your cadence, your pace, your speed, etc., and your heart rate and breathing rate to determine your VO2 max. But we are going to ignore all of that, actually. We are going to look at a derived metric called the V dot. Now, V dot is a term coined by Jack Daniels, and it's commonly used across the running industry. It's Jack Daniels, the running coach, not Jack Daniels, the booze person. Commonly used across the industry to be able to compare runners of different distances. So let's say someone runs, a 5-hour marathon and someone runs a 10-minute mile. Well, who is a better runner? And sure, you can say, well, the marathon ran farther, but the 1-miler ran faster. The 1-miler might not be able to run a marathon, and the marathoner might not be able to run a mile at that speed. I mean, they probably can, but like, maybe they can. So how do you compare a 5K runner versus a 10K runner, or one mile runner versus a 2 mile runner, right? Depending on the activity that you do and the distances that you have, it's hard to do apples to apples. But VDOT takes these stats and makes a single number that is comparable across distances and speeds. So it's super useful, and it's incredibly accurate. It's very accurate. So there is a ton of calculators online. There's like a small formula. There's like a table that'll do it. What you need to do is take a distance that you've run, basically your all out, your max, distance, not your max distance, sorry, your max effort. That could be the fastest mile you've ever done, your personal best, your fastest 5K, 10K, whatever. Oftentimes they say take a race, because that really represents like you put everything in with nothing left. Oftentimes your personal bests are just like the fastest you got when you were running, but you knew you were going to like run the next several days. You're, keeping something in the tank. You weren't trying to hurt yourself kind of, or rather you wanted to make sure that you didn't go too far. But races, you go a little farther usually. So that's why they say take the VDOTs from that. So anyways, a personal best is completely fine. And so for me, my personal best mile was like something like 7:20 or 7:12 or something like that. And I used that to get my VDOT. And then from that, it told me what my expected mile time was, my expected 2 mile, my 5K, my 10K, my half marathon, my marathon times. And you know what? They lined up incredibly well. My marathon time and my 1 mile time really like corresponded. Kind of, but yeah, they really corresponded. So once you get this VDOT, you can actually determine what your best paces at these distances are. So what do you do with this VDOT when you have it? Well, you use it to determine your training paces. So a recovery run pace should be like your, basically you go to this graph, there's plenty of these tables, you find your VDOT and you go find your recovery run pace. And it's like usually like 2.5 minutes slower than your fastest mile or whatever like that, like per mile. And that's the pace you run at for recovery. Slow pace. You use that to determine your fastest paces for your, long runs and for your your interval runs and your tempo runs, which should be at a specific different type of pace. So get your VDOT, use that to determine the types of paces you want to be in these specific training zones. Now, I've said the word zones. I'm going to break down the running pace into 3 different zones. The first zone is that conversational pace we talked about, the one your recovery run should be at. It's less than 145 BPM. You should be at a conversational pace, be able to speak, and you should be breathing regularly without a lot of stress. You should be able to sing while you're doing it. Zone 1 is where your recovery runs are. It's where most of your runs should be. Now we're going to talk about zone 2. Zone 2 is between 145 and let's say 165, 170, up to maybe let's say 75% or 80% of your maximum heart rate, which maximum heart rate is 220 minus age. Broadly speaking, roughly speaking, and there's more accurate formulas out there. But we can come back and talk a little bit about that later. Maximum heart rate and peak heart rate are a little bit different, and we can talk about that later. So zone 2 is between 145 and 165 to 170 BPM, maybe 165 we'll say. And that's where you want to do kind of your HUD runs, where you go kind of a medium distance. And typically you actually don't want to do that many runs in zone 2. You want to do most of your runs in zone 1 or zone 3. Zone 2 is like a little bit of both, right? Zone 2 is actually this time where your lactic acid buildup in your muscles is about the same as your ability to clear lactic acid. So zone 1, you can clear all the lactic acid in your body. Your muscles aren't really like having any problems. Your O2 is not having any problems. Zone 2, you're clearing the lactic acid about as fast as you're making it. But at some point, and you're drawing in a lot of air. But at some point, you go to zone 3 where you can't clear the lactic acid as fast as you make it. There's kind of like a very specific moment where this happens. It's usually above that 165 rate, and that's for really hard to work out, so you can't sustain for a long time. Now, when you go into that point, this is your lactic acid threshold. When you're doing runs at that point or around that point, you're improving your lactic acid threshold, which is something you need to do to be able to run longer distances harder, right? Your ability to clear lactic acid is something you can train. And so we train that by doing zone 3 runs. Also, your VO2 max, this VDOT, is also trained by pushing to your max VO2. You're basically you're like out of breath basically, and pulling back a little bit and staying right there. You're just around that line when you're doing things like intervals and repeats. So that's a lot of the zone 3 training. It's fast to train your muscles to get stronger. It's long enough to, or it could be long enough to increase your lactic acid threshold, aka threshold run, not like an interval or repeat run. And it can be at a point where you're running out of air. That's usually a repeat run to help improve your VO2 max. So those are the three things that happen in zone 3. But zone 3 is hard. You're suffering sometimes here, right? And so we use it sparingly. We use it sparingly because, one, we need to recover from them, so we can't do them all the time. Two, they're really hard on your body and your muscles, right? And also on your mind. If running is always that, you're not gonna like running, unless you're a masochist, which, some of us are, and I do like zone 3, whatever, for that reason. But zone 1 is, I'm out to see the city, I'm enjoying the sunshine, I'm loving my life, I'm reading a book or listening to an audiobook, I'm people watching, I'm on the treadmill, feeling the rhythm. Zone 2 is, sometimes you do those, you're in between, whatever. Zone 3 is you're like on a workout, right? So most of your runs should be in zone 1. Some of your hard runs should be in zone 3. Zone 2 you can be in sometimes, but not that much. So those are our 3 running zones. Now, during your during running, let's talk about 2 important things that go hand in hand. One is cadence and one is breathing rate. So the cadence the cadence essentially is the number of steps you take per minute. It's usually measured in steps per minute. Now, the Nike Run Club app, Strava, many other things will measure this for you. So you can figure out exactly how many steps you're doing per minute. And you want that to be roughly between 170 to 200 steps per minute. Often 180 is the number that people will say. 190 is for faster runners. 170 is a little bit slower. But what I see, especially with amateur runners, and especially myself, is that cadence can be between 140 and 160, 135 and 160 even. And you don't really want that. A lower cadence means that every impact is essentially taking more weight and more force. So that can lead to higher injury rates. In fact, cadence is one of the most important indicators of your risk or safety in running. The vertical landing force, VLF, increases when you have kind of bigger, heavier steps. So what you really want is fast, smaller steps. You want to be fleet of foot. The way I've heard about this is running on a cloud or running on lava, or imagine that you're taking off, or imagine that you're making the smallest amount of contact with your foot on the ground as you possibly can. Now, this will naturally increase your cadence by thinking about this. You'll literally, that this is a mental cue to help you increase your cadence, and it will literally decrease your injury rate. This is one of the best kept secrets, I think, for amateur runners. You should absolutely be running with a higher cadence. And you're like, well, hey, if I'm taking more steps, aren't I moving faster? And I can't go that fast. Absolutely true. So what you do to kind of work up to a higher cadence is take shorter steps. So what you want to do, instead of taking big, long steps, and I fucking love taking those big, long steps. I take these big, long steps and like launch off. And I'd feel so strong and so big from it. But this is called overstriding. And when you take those big steps, you actually apply a braking force. You actually slow down with each step to on every one of those big steps. And 1, it puts a ton of force on you. 2, that vertical landing force is huge. Knees, ankles, shins, foot bones, hips are all taking that. And 3, I don't know, whatever, 2 is enough. So those are some of the things. Okay, so you want these shorter, faster steps with less weight on each one of them. And basically that is, you train that slowly over time. It takes a little bit of time. You can listen to music that has a faster beat and kind of imagine yourself doing that, or running to the beat. And over time, that can help improve your cadence. That's thing 1. Think about running on water or a cloud or coals or glass or whatever. Think about having your feet having like little contact as possible. And then another 2 things that I really like as far as this include, imagine your feet are a wheel. And essentially every contact is like you're rolling the wheel. And this kind of actually is close to an optimal-ish running form, where you kind of your wheel touches the ground and then it comes back up, and you cycle this wheel. So I like thinking about that wheeling, and it helps me. And another thing is that your center of gravity in your body should actually stay relatively level. It shouldn't be bobbing up and down that much. You will be bobbing as you move, but this kind of level center of gravity means that you're doing less work, and so you're kind of just smoothly gliding along, and that is really, really nice. So we want to get to that cadence between 170 and 190. 180 is usually what I shoot for. If you're going a little slower, 170 is fine. If you're going a little faster, 190. Even like fastest runners can go up to like 200. But once you get high cadence, small steps, the way to get faster then is to start making your steps slightly larger, right? And then when you get to like that optimal step size, then you want to start increasing your cadence again. So does that make sense? Often runners will overstride. What you want to do is shorten your stride, increase your cadence without changing your speed so you can continue at the same rate. Then you want to increase your cadence until you get to 170. And then you want to increase the size of your steps until they're large enough, and then increase your cadence again. That was terrible, but okay. So that's cadence. Now we're going to talk about breathing rate. Now the important thing with breathing is that you want it to be essentially rhythmic. You want it to be tied to your steps. So your breathing is tied to your cadence. Now, typically on a hardish run, you want to be doing a 2-2 breathing rate. That means 2 steps for your breath in and 2 steps for your breath out. Now, this is different for everybody, but you, like most runners who are running, at a hard rate, do that. When you're going slower, your breathing is, you're not taxing your VO2, so you're in zone 1. Your breathing can be a little bit slower. Often it's 3-3, something like that, and they're like gentle breaths. When you get harder, you want to take those bigger breaths from your belly, right? You want big belly breaths when you're running, and when you're running harder, you want to go to a 2-3 or a 2-2. A 2 means steps for inhale. The first one is steps for inhale. The second is steps for exhale. So at altitude, it might be a little bit different. The air is thinner there, so oftentimes you want to kind of breathe in a little bit more, because the cost of breathing, because it takes energy to breathe. There's like that air has weight. So breathing in and breathing out takes weight. And when you breathe in too fast, that 1-1 per step, a lot of air is just kind of stuck up here, right? It's in your nose, mouth, and not deep in your chest. You're breathing too quickly to actually get the air down there, because you're trying to ventilate. You're trying to get CO2 out and you're trying to get O2 in. So dead air that's just stuck here, it's no good. You want that air to come all the way in and all the way out. So if you breathe too fast, you might not have time for all that, and you're spending a lot of energy. At higher altitudes with thinner air, breathing at a faster rate is less energy, and oftentimes can be a more natural rhythm. But sea level, normal sea level, you want to do 2-2, 3-3. Make sure you get deep breaths and ventilate, get all the air in your mouth and nose in and out. So that's the optimal breathing rate we're looking for, and having that rhythm with your breathing is incredibly important. That's what we're really looking for. That's when you can get into flow, get into the zone, when you time your breaths in and out. I can still remember right now at this moment, I can remember like the times I've really been in proper flow and felt like the air is coming exactly the right rate, my steps are at exactly the right rate, and just felt like completely rhythmic and like I could go forever, And so those are really some of those beautiful moments when it comes to running. So we talked about optimal cadence, 180, we'll say. We talked about optimal breath rate, 2-2. We talked about finding your V dot, which is taking your best run time and finding out, using it to determine what your other distance runs would be and what rates do for your running. We talked about zone 1, 2, and 3. We talked about recovery runs, we talked about recovery runs, workout runs, and distance runs. And I wanted to mention one more thing about a max heart rate. Max heart rate is slightly different than peak heart rate. Peak heart rate is the highest your heart rate will get when you're actually running. So the way to find this out basically is to go do hill repeats. That is, go to the bottom of the hill, sprint up to the top of the hill, walk back down the hill, and keep going. And you keep doing that until your heart rate maxes out, until it goes as high as it can. This won't be your max heart rate. It'll be the highest heart rate that your body will take you to for a run, for an exercise thing like this, right? And so that's actually very, very relevant. For me, I think that number comes at like I don't know, I actually forget what it is, maybe 187? No, I'm thinking something wrong. I feel like it's usually like 181 is my max heart rate, but I've gotten higher than that. But my peak heart rate. Well, my max heart rate as a 30 to 33-year-old man over the time I've been running. Wow, been 3 years, huh? Is 220 my age or 197. So sorry, 187. Only if right. So we talked about that. Peak heart rate, VO2 max, VDOT, conversational paces, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, clearing lactic acid, periodicity, getting a training plan, the Nike Run Club app. Let's talk a little bit about measuring success. You should measure success in every single way you possibly can. And so what that really means is keep all your metrics, and anytime something happens, celebrate. Celebrate the start of every run. Celebrate every time anything changes or improves. Stay consistent and just like be really positive about this and celebrate at the end of the run too. It's actually shown that having a celebration, like a celebration movement, dance, action thing, pat on the back, encourages that activity, makes you do it more, right? So this is a lot about habit formation and consistency and practice and stuff. And so we'll stop there. I've literally told you about half of the Jack Daniels running book, coach book, which is really great. A few other things with running form: keep your face totally loose, keep your hands totally loose, just loose to your side, keep your shoulders loose, keep your body straight. You want to hit your foot should be underneath the point of contact. When your foot hits the ground, should be beneath your center of mass. That is proper running form, because if it's more or less, you're kind of leaning too much forward, leaning too much back, and it'll take you off balance. You want to be leaning forward slightly when you're running. You want your chin to be leading your chest when you're running. You want your arms to be kind of close to your body, tucked into your side, and you don't want them to pass the midline. You don't want to go like this. Like this is fine. Shoulders back and down. Imagine you can, this is so much stuff about running that I just dumped on you for this 30-minute video. We will talk more about it later. Congrats that you made it to the end. Oh my God, thank you everyone for making it to the end. Smash that like and subscribe video. Bye.